All right, guys, welcome back to another episode. To the Show We Go Baseball podcast. We're dipping into the Red Sox today. We have a name that a lot of Red Sox fans are probably very familiar with, and if not, you've been under a rock lately. But we have Justin Slaten on today's episode, now a two-time guest of the show, which we appreciate very much. But Justin, I know we were just talking a little bit about you being back home, back in Texas right now. So what have you been up to since the offseason started, and what kind of things have you been doing?
Honestly, since offseason started, I've been just like I took a little bit of time to just kind of relax and see my family for a few days before I actually ended up going on vacation for a little over, I guess, a week and a half ish. Went to Europe with some friends and just got to completely, dissociate from everything back home and just get my mind off baseball before coming back. And since I've been back, it's been pretty slow around. That's kind of why I like coming back home where I live. It's just like kind of a slow way of living. So, you know, the days are just filled with me basically, waking up, going, working out, throwing, and then coming home and just spending time with my family. So it's good. I got both my mom and dad live in the same area. So I'm able to just kind of split time up, see them, see my siblings and my extended family and stuff like that. So it's been really good.
Where in Europe were you?
We went to Amsterdam for 4 days, Copenhagen for 4 days, and then we went to Madrid for 4 days.
Oh wow! Like was this your first time in Europe?
Yeah, my first time ever in Europe. It was amazing. We had an awesome time. It was just really cool to get out there, see just like a bunch of really cool stuff. It's kind of the reason that we picked the places that we picked was because they just had like really cool stuff is what we heard, at first whenever Copenhagen had gotten thrown around. I was like, I've never really heard of people like talk about going to Copenhagen. And then after 4 days there, I was like, I wish that we were spending the rest of the trip here. And then when we got home, I was like, I would, next year, if we were to do the trip again, I obviously would want to go and see more places, but I would definitely be okay with if they were like, hey, let's throw Copenhagen back in there and make sure we stop there again. So that place was amazing.
I had a buddy that studied abroad there for 3 months, and I remember him talking about there's like a bar where you were in. It was like everything was frozen, and they gave you like a special coat when you came in. Like what kind of cool stuff did you get into there?
We went to I don't know if we heard about that one, but it might have been. There was one when we were in Amsterdam we heard of that was called the Ice Bar, and it's like literally like frozen. Like when you go inside, it's like ice. And we didn't go in there, but that would be something I guess that would have reminded me of that. But when we were in Copenhagen, we got to see some of like the coolest stuff. We like the first day we were there, we went to this place called the Rosenborg Castle, which is where a lot of the like royal family, I guess, like the first royal family that lived in Denmark stayed. And so it was built like in, I mean, gosh, like the 15 or 1600s. And it's pretty much the exact same building. They're doing some, I guess, some like not renovations, but like upkeep type stuff when we were in there, like making sure that stuff like stayed preserved. So a couple of the rooms were like a little bit like hard to get into and hard to see, but for the most part, we got to see like the entire thing. And I mean, it was like you're walking around the grounds, there's a moat outside, the guards are walking in, and then you go inside and you take this tour, and there's like 3 levels of this castle, and it's like you're going in all of these rooms, and they've got, I mean, there was like you could have done like this, an audio guide, I guess, if you wanted to listen to it, but they also gave you like a pamphlet when you went in that it was like, you walked in and you always walked in the same kind of like counterclockwise pattern through the rooms and then back to the stairs, then up the next level and then walk around. And the pamphlet kind of like turned as you went into each room, and then it would tell you like, hey, this is what's in this room. And so we went in the castle, got to tour all of that. Then we went outside, and then we went into the treasury, which is actually where the country keeps all of their crown jewels. And so we got to see like all of these like amazing, cool. Amazing artifacts, like these crowns. Like one of them I remember that like stuck out to me the most was this crown, and like on the top it had like 3 little like points that went off on like guess like opposite sides of the crown, and in each one was a jewel. and that these jewels apparently had been given to them from the people in Tasmania back like in the 1300s, were given to the country because they were trying to marry off their daughter to the son of one of the people in Denmark. And I was like, that's crazy. This crown was built or made in like the 1400s. I mean, it was just unbelievable. But we went there, we went to a church that was pretty famous there, where you walk basically the spiral staircase to the very top outside. I got about halfway up and immediately turned around and went back. It was very terrifying. You're outside. I mean, you very easily could fall over.
Thanks.
Me and one of the other guys I was with, we had our backs planted up against the center part of it, and we just like shimmied our way back down. It was crazy going up the stairs and stuff. This was also built hundreds of years ago. So, I mean, I'm a pretty big guy, like 6'5", and then the other guy was with 6'7", and we're trying to climb up these like little staircases, and it's like shoulders, like you're sliding through these walls, but people are also coming down as you're trying to go up. So you're having to step off to the side. It was cool to do one time, but if we were to go back, I would just like, we're not doing that again. Not even close. But I mean, there's so many amazing things that we saw while we were there. It truly was just like one of the most beautiful places that I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing.
Are you big into history prior to this?
Yeah. So that's I guess what part of me is like was super excited about is I am like, I wouldn't say a history nerd, but like stuff like that is very fascinating to me. It's like getting to go in these places and being like, holy crap, like so-and-so did this. And like, and just trying to think like, man, 500 years ago, they were coming through here wearing this, or like, this is what they were using, like the swords that they had like displayed. Apparently, like we got to see all these swords, and they were like, could you imagine like, how do you even fight with something like that? It looked like so big, and they're like, no, you don't. They didn't fight with these. These were like Rolexes in like the 1400s, where it was like they just wore these basically to like show their status of being like, look how big this sword is and how beautiful it is. And so I'm like, well, that's really cool. So stuff like that is very neat to me.
It's always it's always fascinating too, by the way, with like when I think of history, and when I'm not from Boston or the New England area, but the amount of history that was there and that we wanted to see when we moved there. And it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is like nothing compared to what Europe has to offer. And they were doing, there's so many things like dating back hundreds and hundreds of years ago, even thousands of years ago. And then here it's like a couple hundred. Yeah. And it's just like, you have things back, like you said, the 1400s. It's like, you can't really find that here in America. So
no, it's kind of like in America, it's almost like you have to find like landscapes for that or something, like natural things like the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
that's where you're going to find it. It's not going to be architecture or anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. I mean, like my parents, like they really enjoyed going to Boston. Like this year was like the first time that any of them had ever made it up there. And so for them to go and like do that type of stuff was really cool. But when you think about it, like on the grand scale of things, it's like, it was just a different time. Like when people were coming to America, like stuff had progressed already so much from like what it was in Europe. So it's like, it's cool, like thinking about, oh, like this is where Paul Revere's house was, and these are like muskets and stuff they used. So then going back, and it's like, I'm looking at something that like this saddle that this guy rode on his horse in like 1415. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, how in that time now, 600 years ago, like, how did they make this? And like the way that like, I could go on and on about it. But the last thing I'll say is like in the castle, like I'm looking up at the roof and it's like marble, but people have like carved out. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, how did they even do that? Like with thinking about like the technology we have today, like that would still be kind of hard, I would feel like, to do. And thinking about how they were doing that like 600 years ago, I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, no, because I went to the Vatican back in, I think it was 2018, and I just remember thinking the exact same thing. Like, how did they construct this? How did you have like Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel?
Unbelievable.
Available there? It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Some of the paintings that we were looking at, like walking through there, was, I mean, it was like mind blowing. Like looking at one that was like an entire wall that got painted of like, I guess one of the days that like one of the new kings had been crowned. So it was like this huge party in the city, and it was like without a camera or anything, somebody just like painted this off of knowledge, and the detail of it was, I mean, insane. And like thinking about that, when we were in Amsterdam, we went to a art museum. It was the Banksy Museum, and
cool.
that was pretty cool. Like some of the stuff in there was pretty cool, but there was also stuff I'm looking at, and it was like my cousin who's in 6th grade she likes to draw, and I'm like, she could draw this. Like, I'm like, how is this, I guess, like modern art versus like, and like thinking about the stuff that we saw when we were in Copenhagen, like the paintings and the drawings and stuff like that. I was just like, how has it gone from that to this? To me, I think it's insane. Like, but that's just how it is now.
I feel like we could record an entire like hour with just talking about this kind of stuff. I know Ed's fascinated by it. I'm fascinated by it. You are very passionate about it, which I absolutely love. But I know
we are a baseball show.
Yeah. We have to ask the boring questions too, though. But I did enjoy that, though. I feel like we could definitely have a part 2. It's like, where should we talk about next? Like, what part of history? Yeah, maybe that's something in the works.
Yeah. Where in the world was Justin Slaten?
Yeah, I kind of like that. I feel like maybe that's something you need to fire up in the where should we travel to next type thing. Yeah. But I wanted to ask you. I got a boring question here. It's not as fun as like traveling to Europe or any of the cool places you went, but you know, you had a rookie season this past year that you spent the whole year in Boston, and you had a fantastic year. Can you just talk about a little bit of what it was like? You know, just starting off as a rookie this year and having the success that you had in Boston.
I mean, sitting here a year ago talking to you guys, I guess I would have liked to have thought that it would have played out this way, but part of me, like, you know, never really thought that it would have played out kind of how it did. There were a lot of things about the season that I think about that were, you know, unexpected in terms of just like, I guess just kind of how it all shook out. So, I mean, yeah, it was an amazing season, obviously, for more than just like a performance aspect. I mean, to me, it was just the ability for me to make my debut, which is something that I'd chased for years and years and years. And to be quite honest with you, like, if you're a guy that's being taken in the Rule 5, it's almost like you're kind of just searching for that chance, that opportunity. And so to kind of have that be like part of the background where it was like I wasn't like a super highly touted prospect that came through and like, you know, worked my way up like some of these guys that you see these days, you know, it was a little bit of a different path. And so it truthfully, like, it's hard to put into words, but it was an amazing year, something that wouldn't have been possible without like the support of my teammates, the coaching staff there, and then most importantly, like my family and the people that have like kept me grounded for years and kind of like pushed me through the hard times. So yeah, I mean, it was an incredible year.
Can you take us through your first major league appearance and just like what happened and what the emotional experience was like?
Yeah, well, I mean, it happened very fast. Obviously, I threw 5 pitches and then walked into the clubhouse. That was crazy. But I honestly, truthfully, I wouldn't have wanted it to happen like any other way. One, because it is like it's a cool story, like to get to say like, well, that's how I made my debut. But I remember we were in the bullpen, and I just remember the phone going off, and Kevin Walker just kind of looked at me and was just like, "Hey, you got Rodriguez." And like, I didn't really have time to think. I just kind of ripped my stuff off and started throwing. And to me, that was like the best way to go about it, instead of it being, you know, we're up 10 runs or down 10 runs. And now it's like, hey, you got the next inning, and then you have this whole inning to think about it. Like, I had like 2 batters and I had to get like fully hot. And so it was like, just throw. And so to me, like, I didn't really have a chance to get myself worked up. And I felt oddly like the one thing that I can remember about like my mental state, like going into it, was I remember getting to the mound and being almost like shocked at like how calm I was at the time. Because you think about it, like, all spring training, I think about it, and then they tell me I made the team, and I'm thinking about it, and then the first game happens, I don't pitch. The second game happens, I don't pitch, and now it's like, well, it's getting to a point where like you're gonna have to throw, like they're gonna have to put you in the game at some point. And then when I finally got out there, it was just like, all right, like, you got to execute and make pitches here. And then I didn't and gave up the walk-off. But it was it truthfully, like I remember like telling it to somebody in the clubhouse afterwards, was like, I don't think I've ever been like so happy to lose a game. Like, obviously I know that's probably not what like fans wanted to hear, but for me it was just like an incredible moment. Like, it was everything, not just like the year prior, but like the 2 years in the minor leagues I had that were like really bad. And then going back even to college when it was like at my sophomore year was really bad. And it's like, you just start putting all of those things into perspective. And it was just like all of it, from the time that I can first remember stepping on a baseball field, like you start to remember like all these moments that got lost in the middle that like led you to that point. And that to be able to, one, like have that moment, and then two, like afterwards to see my dad like on the field after the game was like, that was one of the best moments of my entire life. It truly was. Like, it's something that like I will never forget, like what I was feeling, where I was standing, what I was seeing, like all of that encapsulated in that moment. Obviously, even though I lost the game for us, but it was still just like, I mean, it was like just a very surreal experience.
What did your dad say to you?
I to be honest with you, I don't remember exactly what was said. There was some tears, kind of, I think, and I think that basically what I remember saying was like, I just remember telling my dad, I was like, "Hey, we did it," and it was just something like, it was just like one of those moments where like we were just kind of getting to share that moment, and it was just like, "Hey, like, this isn't just me. Like we did this. Like everybody here that was, able to be a part of it." So it was really cool.
Did you still have that calmness the next time you came out into a game?
The next day I was a little bit more nervous, than I was the night before, to be honest with you. Like I only threw 5 pitches, and then like that night I remember going in and I was on the training table doing my recovery stuff, and I had my eyes closed because I'm like looking up and there was a light right above the table and it was in my eyes. So I kind of had my eyes closed, and then I see this like shadow kind of block me, and I open it and it was AC, and he was standing over me, and he just had the biggest smile on his face and was just like, "You're a big leaguer forever, kid." And I was just like, "Yeah." And he was just like, "But recover because we're going to need you tomorrow." And I was just like, "All right." And then like the next day I remember like just talking to Bales, and he was just like, "Yeah, you good to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I feel good." Like, I only threw 5 pitches, and he was like, "All right, like we'll try and get you back in there today." And then sure enough, I get back in there. First time ever throwing back to back in my life is my first 2 appearances in the big leagues. Yeah. So yeah, it was crazy. And I definitely was a lot more nervous that second outing than I was the first one, which is wild given the situation.
How was you bring up Andrew Bailey this year, and obviously it's your first ever major league pitching coach that you've had, being in the majors, but what kind of presence was he for you this year?
I think that having a guy like him, not only like in the dugout and like kind of like in the day-to-day stuff like pitching, but just having like a personality like his in the clubhouse made a huge difference. Because like if you listen to him talk and listen to him like speak about like pitching and baseball and stuff, he's like super super passionate, but he also is like, he has this ability to kind of like connect, or like make at least like the attempt to like connect and like get to know you like kind of more on like a personal level. And so for me, right away, like in spring training, it felt like, he was trying to not like tell me what I need to do. It was like, this is what you got to do to make the team. It was like, I'm going to help you make this team. Like, and it's not that he like said that directly. It's just like the feeling that you get. And so to have like a guy like that, that's like, I guess I would say like in the trenches, is kind of something that like the feeling that you get with him. And so it was great. Like whenever I would have an outing where was maybe like a little bit shaky, like throwing strikes or whatnot, like, immediately upon coming in, like he's like the first person to kind of come up to you and just be like, not say like, "Hey, like it's all right, like, you'll get him next time." He just comes up to you and he's like, what were you feeling out there? And just like gives you a moment where it's like, for me, it's important because it's like, that's like, let me just decompress and be like, this is what I'm feeling. Like, hey, like I couldn't throw my cutter for a strike today. Like everything was going arm side, and when I tried to make the adjustment, I was pulling it. And then he pulls up the iPad and he's like, He's like, okay, like, which ones are you talking about specifically? And I'm like, this one, this one, this one. And he's just like, all right, like, we'll get it fixed up. And then, like, the next day is like, hey, this is what we saw. And it's just, like, the constant, like, feedback of being like, hey, like, this is what, this is what we see. This is what we think we can fix. And I remember a stretch kind of, like, in the middle of the season where it was, like, or not middle of the season, like, the beginning of the season, kind of middle part of the first half. And I was really struggling with like just like my feel on the mound, where it was like I would have, even like in a good outing, I was just like, man, like something just feels like kind of off right now, and I don't know what it is. And for him to just kind of like keep like pushing, like, hey, like this is what we think it is, like we'll find it, we'll find it, we'll find it. And then finally, like one day something clicks, and then we kind of continue to go with that. And when that thing clicked, it was like the drills that we used to fix it, I guess, per se. Like he was just like, the rest of the season was like how we feeling about this? We still staying on this? So like not like pushing you to like to the sense where it's like, the season is long and it's grueling and you got to do what you got to do to get through the season, but almost like just like keeping you accountable of like staying on top of that stuff. So I thought that he did great things, not only for me, but I feel like the entire staff as well. So, I mean, it's just like, it couldn't have had obviously like a better person. Like they're helping me kind of get through my first year.
Was there anything new that they taught you, or that they wanted, like they suggested that you do more of, that made a big difference this season? Because this is your first time working with any of these guys. You're new entirely to the organization.
Not entirely, to be honest with you. I mean, they told me a year ago when they took me in the Rule 5 draft, they were like, we didn't take you as a project. We took you because we think that you're someone that could come in and contribute. Like, obviously we want to try and like fine tune a little bit of stuff. But the biggest thing for me was like going into spring training last year and just proving that I could throw all of my pitches in the zone for strikes. And, I feel like I did a good job of that during the spring last year when I was throwing. And so for during the season, it was just like, how do we keep this consistent? How do we keep this rolling? And so throughout the year, yeah, there were times where it was like we were falling into trends or like certain tendencies where it was like, hey, let's try and maybe start throwing this pitch a little bit more. Maybe we can pull off of this pitch a little bit more. And then like as we got towards the end of the season, it was like, hey, like we've been having a lot of really good success with the curveball this year, which was a pitch that I really didn't throw a whole lot in my entire career. And now it's become a pitch that, I feel extremely confident with throwing. And like that wouldn't be possible without them like kind of like pushing that. So it wasn't more or less like mechanical stuff that they had me doing when I came in. It was just like, how do we, one, get everything in the strike zone, and then how do we keep it there? And so those were like the biggest, I would say, two focuses for me throughout spring training last year and then throughout the entire season.
I did have a question about the IL stint that you had, and obviously you missed about a month of time and you were in a very good stretch before you landed on the IL. So, what was that like? I guess trying to get back. Obviously once you landed on the IL, I'm sure it was kind of a blow for you. You were kind of a little upset about that, but trying to get mentally ready once you were coming back to get back into the flow of things after sitting out for a month.
Mm-hmm. It was tough. I mean, it was the hardest part about, I guess, initially going on there was that I didn't think that I needed to. And so I was pretty upset about that. It was something where, I guess, kind of given the situation that we were in where the All-Star break was coming up, it was that A's series right before. So we were playing the A's and then the Royals at home. And it was that A's series where I was I'd been feeling stuff a little bit before that, but I had been kind of like, okay, like I can get through or really just like the two series before that. And then by the time we got to the A's series, it had become something where I was like, okay, I'm not just feeling a little bit of something, like a little bit of extra soreness, like something's actually there. And, it was, the training staff and I kind of made the mutual decision of like, look, there's no need to push it right now. We can, put you on the IL. Then we have all of the All-Star break to get through it. And then we come back, we get, through it and we're fine. Because truthfully, like all the tests and stuff that we were doing, it wasn't showing like to be anything major. So we weren't concerned at all. And I was truthfully like a little bit upset to be going on the IL at the time because I was like, man, just like, give me like a couple of days and then, like it'll just get through there. Like, just like I can pitch if we need to, but like, let's just try and give it a couple of days. And they're like, I think that this is the smartest thing. Like, let's just go on the IL. Let's attack this. And then 15 days we're back. And so then obviously it took a lot longer than the 15 days. And it wasn't until like I went into the All-Star break where it was like, hey, we're going to take 2 days. Like, don't come into the facility. Like, just let it rest. Like, we're not even going to touch it. And in those 2 days, like, of not throwing, not lifting, not doing anything at the field, it actually, like, at times felt a little bit worse. And then the day where I came back in to kind of do some treatment and play catch, it was still there. And then the next day was kind of like the day that we were leaving to go to Los Angeles. They were like, we're going to keep you back. It just wasn't getting better. I was still feeling the same exact stuff. And so that was when I kind of realized, I'm like, okay, there actually was like a little bit of something going on, and it probably was for the best that we did go on the IL. And so I was like, the hardest thing about it was obviously like having the expectation of it's like, this is just going to be a 15-day deal, and we're not even going to miss that much time because we got the All-Star break, which is going to knock out, so many days. And then because I didn't pitch, we were able to like retroactively date it and stuff like that. So all of this stuff was like lined up where it's like, all right, we're going to miss at most like 4 games. And then for it to then take like 5 weeks, I think was obviously like a pretty big bummer for me. It was hard, especially when the team was on the road in Texas or in Dallas and in Houston, because those were 2 series that I was really looking forward to going to, obviously like coming back home, but even more so just like being apart from the team. Like it's just, they're all out there, we're in the middle of a playoff race, like trying to win games, and you're just watching, and it's like, man, like I'd give anything to be there with those guys right now. But for them, that entire time I had a ton of support from my teammates, from the staff, where even when the team was on the road, like guys were texting me like, hey, hope you're feeling better, miss you, like wish you were here with us, but like get better. And same thing, like the coaching staff was checking in certain days, like kind of throughout the throwing process, and I would have like a good day of throwing and bails or walk, or hey, see somebody's reaching out, shooting me a text, being like, hey man, like how's it feeling? Hey, we're feeling good. Like, all right, good. Like we'll get you back soon. And so it was good, I guess, from that stance of like having the support of like, hey, like take your time, like get through this, but when you get back, like we'll be ready to roll. And then by the time I was ready to come back, getting to go out to Portland and pitching there one time, like although like the results weren't that great in that little rehab game, I felt really good and came back from there, and I was like, look, I'm ready to go. And so from then on, just had like a ton of confidence just because of the way that, everybody had told me like, hey, like whenever you get back, we're going to be rocking and rolling in this playoff race, just take your time. So yeah, I mean, it was obviously very hard to go on the IL and miss a lot more time than you anticipate, but I think that, and in the grand scheme of things, like looking at the long-term aspect of my career, it was probably the best thing to do because there was just no sense in pushing something that was pretty real. So yeah, that's kind of how that whole process shook out.
It's interesting to hear about the support you were getting from your teammates. How closely knit is the Red Sox bullpen?
That's truthfully like one of the more like tight knit units that I've ever been a part of, and I'd only been in the bullpen for a couple of years, just in general. And when you're in the bullpen in the minor leagues, obviously it's like a 15-man crew, and you're going out there, and it's pretty much know what days you're throwing, and nobody's ever really taxed. And then for my first year in Boston, getting to know, like you're trying to establish yourself on a big league roster, 2, trying to make new friends and generate these relationships, and 3, like you're doing it in a group that is so tight knit and so like just about each other. It was a little bit tough at first just because it's like some of these guys had relationships with each other, but I mean, after about a month of pitching and truthfully like pitching like pretty well, I think those guys that were there, I was able to gain like almost like a little bit of respect. Not that I didn't have it before, but people were like, all right, like he's for real, like he's here to stay. And so I was able to kind of like build these good relationships with these guys. And I think the biggest part about the bullpen last year was having the guy that's like the old guy that kind of has the experience and kind of has the ability to like, one, like keep it lighthearted, but also like show you the way to do things. And to me, like that was Chris Martin. I mean, he was like in all of my years of baseball, I think like I just like getting some of the most beneficial stuff that I've gotten was just like from watching him and being around him and like one, learning how to pitch, how to handle like the big moments, the pressure and this and that, but two, like how to be a teammate and how to be like a leader without really trying to be a leader. Like, I mean, you ask anybody like, hey, like, do you think that Chris Martin like wants to, be a captain on this team? Like the answer is going to be no. And he would tell you no. But I would argue that he had some of like the most like influence in the locker room just because of the respect that people had for him, but also the respect that he had for other people. So, I mean, having a guy like him that it just kind of like kept everything together. I mean, he was the glue. And when we didn't have him, things were kind of tough because it's just like you're missing like this presence that you have in the bullpen where it's like just kind of like in a way like the dad, we would kind of call him at times, like the dad of the bullpen, where it was like just able to like keep everybody together, being on the road. Like we had a bullpen group text and it was just every time we're on the road, it's like he's sending his room number and it's like, come hang out. And we're going out to his room and we're playing PGA and we're playing college football. And it's just stuff like that is like the little things that I guess like you can take for granted. That I think like that's the type of stuff that made us so like tight knit. And so now it's like all of those guys in the bullpen are some of like my best friends and the people that I have like the most respect for. Because it is like pitching on the bullpen is something that's, it's hard to do because you're really the only ones that understand how like what it's like. You go out there and you have a great game, like nobody really talks about it because you did your job. But like you go out there and the one time you screw up, like the media's coming to your locker after the game, and then the people are talking to you outside the stadium or whatever's going on. It's just like that's just the nature of it. And so to be able to have like the support from those guys, like I just remember like at times like coming in after a game, like if I had a bad one, like I could be sitting at my locker and within 5 minutes there were 7 guys that were coming up to me, like giving me a pat on the back or like sitting next to me being like, talking to me. And it was the other 7 guys in the bullpen. I mean, like, amazing people. I mean, Chris Martin, number one, but then like guys like Brennan Bernardino, like clubhouse favorite, like Greg Weissert, like all these guys, Josh Winkowski, even like all these guys. It's just like, we feel for each other because we're the only ones that kind of go through what we go through and the only ones that understand it. And so I think it just makes us like that much tighter.
Yeah. So I do kind of have to mention just what happened at the end of the season with Kenley Jansen. Was that kind of an awkward position to be in for you? Because this is a guy that does have that veteran presence and has been, like it's obviously been reported a lot what happened toward the end of the season there. But I guess just what was your relationship with Kenley, and was that just kind of like what was the end of the season like for you?
My relationship with Kenley was fine. I mean, I'd say that he kind of had the same relationship with everybody. It was just like, he's going to be there if you need him to be there. But obviously, like, he's at a point in his career where he's done so much. Like, he doesn't have to try and demand the respect or have to try and do this. Like, you just respect him for what he's done. And so he was like, when you talk about like one of those guys where it's like, he didn't talk or say a whole lot, but when he did, you listened because of the experience that he had. And the stuff at the end of the season, I think it's just kind of like, I don't really know how to put it. I guess I would say it was just kind of like it happened how it happened. He had been dealing with some stuff that, he felt like for him he wanted to keep playing baseball for the next couple of years. He felt like that was what was best for him and his career. And nobody can really fault him for that. I mean, at the end of the day, like you got to take control of your career, however you're going to do it. And so, I mean, it's like, I don't think anybody has really any ill will towards him. Obviously, it's just like, there's a little bit of like, I mean, obviously a situation I've never been in, but it's just like, hey, at the end of the day, you got to do what you think is best for you. Obviously, nobody wants him to go out there and pitch hurt and hurt himself and ruin his chances of playing, for the next couple of years. But that was something that I wouldn't say that it was like a really big issue in the locker room. I mean, it just kind of like happened how it happened. And, people reported on it, people asked about it, but it was just like, hey, I mean, he made a decision. Like, you're going to go. All right, we'll see you later. Thanks for everything. And that's that.
So going back to Chris Martin, we were talking a little bit about the show about how before the show about how there are different types of Texans. What type of Texan is Chris Martin? Like what part of the like what would how would you describe that? And what part is he actually from for Texas also?
Well, he's from Dallas, but he's like, I guess, a little bit of that concrete cowboy, but not really. Like he is the I mean, he would hate. I mean, he would have something to say to me for saying that. But no, I mean, he is like, I mean, he's as Texas as it gets. I mean, is the embodiment of it. I mean, he's got the Sam Elliott voice. I mean, even the Sam Elliott white hair. I mean, he's. I mean, I like again like how trying to think about how to describe him. I mean, he is just like he's one of a kind, I guess. Like he wants to go home. He wants to get out on the ranch. I mean, it's cool. Like obviously, like we still all keep in contact in the off season, and he keeps the group chat honestly a little bit more active than anybody else with his videos of him driving tractors around and working on fences and working with his animals he's got out on his ranch and stuff like that. So I mean, he's definitely. I mean, he is. That is like the North Texas where it's like not Dallas, but he's like that Wichita Falls kind of like even closer more towards like the West Texas like plains-ish where it's like just a ton of like you're driving through a ton of nothing. It's kind of like where he's at. He's exactly again like fits that bill to a T.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this opened up a whole nother can. I gotta text Suge after this and ask what kind of Texan he is and see if what he says to me, and maybe I'll ask what kind of Texan Slaten is. I'm gonna see what he says. But yeah, it's a whole new world for me with the Texas stuff here.
I'm just imagining Chris Martin with like a Sam Elliott mustache now.
When he gets through a couple more years of playing or however long he plays for, you give him 6 months max. After that season, whenever it's all done, and he might be doing cameos as him. So
6'7" Sam Elliott.
Yeah.
Well, I have one more question regarding just like I guess Boston and I guess that thing, and then I have a couple like off the field things too. But
okay.
You preluded to this earlier as well in regards to just with media talking to you, if you had a bad game, you might hear about it. People might say stuff to you outside the stadium or whatever it is. It's not a secret that Boston is like not an easy place to play sometimes, and especially if you do have the bad games, you hear about it. And I have a two-parter for you. So I know that you're decently on social media. I would say like you use your Twitter and your Instagram and things like that, and you even roasted me during the season about Zaxby. So I do remember that, by the way, and I know you remember that too. So I got called out for that by you. That was impressive. Yep. So I didn't know you were lurking in the shadows out there, but. So you're on social media a little bit during the season and everything. So how hard was it to kind of disassociate sometimes? Like say you did have a bad game and maybe you had like, people, saying stuff about you online or whatever it was. Like how hard was that to kind of disassociate with all that and just be like, you know what, it's okay. It's just, it comes with the territory.
Well, to be honest with you, so I had social media at the beginning of the season. And then when it got to the point where not just about myself, but then like obviously like you start getting tagged and stuff, and so then like your algorithm puts it together. It's like, okay, like he's gonna be around Boston stuff, and then the next thing you know, it's like I'm not even seeing stuff about myself, but just in other things. And I think it was like at that point I remember I was just like, all right, I'm done. And so like I deleted all forms of social media for probably the better half of like 3 months before the All-Star break. Through the end of the season, like I just didn't have it, and it was great, to be honest with you.
I bet
it was great. It was like some advice, like some people talk about it, like, hey, like you don't need to look at this stuff. Like it's not going to do anything for you, whether they're saying good things about you or bad things about you. Like it's not going to help. And I fully believe that. I mean, it's something like when the season was over, I still didn't even want to I just didn't even want to use it, for. Even like a little bit after the season. And so now it's like you're back on it like a little bit, but like sparingly. It'll definitely be something that like when the spring training comes around again, like, all right, like it's done. Like things were going really good whenever we didn't have it. And so like, it's just hard. Like I believe that it was Chris Martin who said, like, it's no matter what they're saying, if they're saying good things about you or bad things about you, like it's not going to do anything to help you. In fact, it's just going to hurt you. And so, yeah, I mean, that was something that, we would hear about like before. Like I remember when I was at the rookie development camp, like part of it was like the media training. It's like, hey, like the fans here are going to be pretty tough and you're going to have to deal with some questions or some situations and whatever it may be. But especially like being in a city like Boston where like everybody is so passionate about not just the Red Sox. I mean, I've come to see it's like all of the teams. But to me, like that's great. And even like guys that from other teams like that we played with, like they were just talking about like how great it was. Like it's such a privilege to be able to play in a city like this, because it's like, why would you want to go play somewhere where like nobody cares whether you win or lose? Like people aren't coming to your games. I mean, like we were going out there every single night when we were 10 games above 500, when we were under 500, like 5 games out of the playoffs, in the playoffs, it didn't matter. Like we're going to Fenway and it was full. I mean, aside from like a handful of games, maybe on like a Wednesday night where it's like not as full, but it's like, okay, well, it's a Wednesday and we're playing, an out of division team. So it's like not something that's deemed like as like a super important game. But I mean, if we were playing, gosh, I mean, like we were playing the Orioles or the Rays or something like that, it didn't matter. Monday through Sunday, like that place was packed. And so to me, like that's just such a privilege to be able to have, where it's like you don't ever feel like you're going out there and you can just take the night off. Because I mean, there were times like, I mean, I like playing when we played in Chicago against the White Sox or played in Tampa Bay at Tropicana, like a little bit of it, it's like, dang, like it's kind of sad. Or like Oakland at the beginning of the year, it's like I feel bad for these guys. Like to them, like they must love like going on the road, because it's like you're getting to come and like play in a place where there's like a ton of fans. And so to me, like that's just like, that's one of the things I love the most about Boston. It's like, you can't have both. Like you can't have fans that care and then expect to not hear it whenever you're doing bad. I mean, it's just like, it comes with the territory. And to me, it's like, I would much rather have it that way than the other way.
Yeah, I was so curious too, just like with with you being a rookie and brand new to the org too. It's like one of those things where it's like I know a lot of the guys that get up to Worcester and AAA there, and they're kind of like, okay, like we know what to expect. We've been in the organization for a bit, but for you, being brand new to the org and then brand new to Boston, I will say, and I think in Red Sox fans' defense, I don't think I've seen another guy that was a rookie get as much love and support as I've seen you get on social media. So take that for what it's worth. But I don't really see that many people, even on my feed, say any. I don't think I've seen anything negative at all.
I mean, it helps when you spend most of the season just kicking everybody's ass in front of you, which is basically what happened. Like,
but I do get what you're saying though, Justin, where it's like, even if it's not about you, like it could be about the guy sitting next to you in the locker room. And it's like, obviously, when I'm scrolling through Twitter sometimes, like, I'm seeing some guys be put down pretty harsh, and it's just like, sheesh, I don't really want to see that either. And I'm not even the guy like playing with that guy. You know what I'm saying? So I totally understand like, where you're coming from, where it's like, even if it's not about you, it's still like, it doesn't really help anything. So
yeah, no, not at all. I mean, yeah, it is like, as much as it, there were times like like when I was on social media, I was tagged in like some things or like sent stuff, DMs, whatever it was, that was stuff that was like, this, there's not a place for this in my life. There shouldn't really be a place for it in sports. There shouldn't be a place for some of the stuff that I saw, like even just like in the world. Like if we're being honest, some of the stuff that I was sent was like very harsh and borderline like scary. And so that was kind of at the point where it was like, this isn't good. Like we don't even need to like have the opportunity to see this right now. And so it wasn't more or less like I could go on there if I think, man, like the game in St. Louis was kind of like my first game of like, I got out there and kind of got my ass handed to me. Like if I go on there and I see something and it's like, you suck tonight, and I'm like, yeah, I did. That's one thing. Like I can handle that. Like I've had much harder critics in my life than that, but it's the other stuff that when it starts getting like personal, that's the kind of stuff that like I don't want to have my teammates to have to like get those types of things. But yeah, I mean, even when you're sitting there and it's like, man, like, hey, like so and so may have had a bad game, where it's like, well, you don't know what it's like. I mean, dude, he pitched 5 out of the last 7 games. Like, he's given everything he's got. Like, it's just stuff like that where it's like, you never want to see, like, you don't want to do bad, obviously, but it hurts even worse at times whenever like it is like your teammate, that's going through it, because you know what you feel like when it's happening. So in a way, it almost makes you feel like worse when it happens to someone else. But like, again, like I said, I mean, like, that's just almost in a way like it is a privilege of like playing, in this city. Like, people care a lot. I want the fans to care a lot. Everybody in that clubhouse wants the fans to care a lot. But at the end of the day, we just got to know that, like, these are just opinions. Like, the only opinions that really matter are the ones that's inside the clubhouse. And for the most of the year, all those opinions were that, we were good enough to make the playoffs, obviously, and just stuff just didn't go our way.
All right, Ed. You get Justin. You've given us a ton of your time, and we definitely appreciate that. I will say the only opinion that I didn't like out of you was the Zaxby's hate this year, but I'm still gonna wear that one on my sleeve. By the way, just you chirping at me from the clouds, man. I'm still a little salty about that one. But Ed, before we head out here, do you have anything emptying the bench here?
I have 2 questions for you.
Okay.
First one is, I remember last year, one of the things that I was most excited about was you talking about your grandfather and how he plays Diamond Mind and how he has you on his team every year. How did this year go for him on that? Like, does he still like was he pleased with your performance?
He was pleased with my performance, definitely. I mean, this was the year too. Like, I may have talked about it, like how he was like one of my biggest critics. And this year he wasn't very critical of me, because he just kind of would sit there and say, "Is like, well, I've like talking to him after the season. It was more like he would just say, "Is like, I've been harsh on you your entire life, but now it's like you've made it to a point where there's nothing that I can say that you don't already know." And so it's funny that you bring that up. I'm actually leaving tomorrow, going out of town tomorrow afternoon to go and spend the weekend with them and get to just see them a little bit right before the holidays. And so that's something that I'm sure it will be an extensive conversation. When I get to his house, he'll have his computer set up and he'll probably be on the game and he'll run me through, like, this is what I did, 30 simulations. You were trash in 15 of them. What's that? But no, yeah, it is funny that you bring that up. He would get a kick out of that because I am going to see them tomorrow afternoon. So yeah, I'm sure that we'll get into that.
That's I might need some feedback on that at some point, just as to what he says about how those simulations went.
Yeah.
So my second question is, I got to go to San Antonio back in March, and we flew in through Austin, and I didn't get as much of a chance to have the barbecue there as I would have liked, but I did get to go to Ray Black's barbecue, which I think there were a few of those, and it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good, but just as somebody born and raised in Texas, what's the best barbecue spot there?
The best barbecue spot in all of Texas, in my opinion. Now, I haven't been to a lot that I've heard are really good, so I'll say this. From the places that I've been to, the best one by far is a place called Pinkerton's in Houston. And it was
just
on.
Gonna write this down. Sorry.
It was on. I believe they were featured on Texas Monthly a few years ago. I remember my dad had told me about it, and he had gone down there and had it. This was years ago. This was probably like 2019 was whenever he told me about it, and then it was during COVID. One of my best friends from college, his sister was moving to Houston, and so he was coming with her. And I was like, "Oh, I'm not really doing anything. It's the middle of COVID. Let me drive down there, and we'll go to this barbecue place. He loves barbecue too." And we went there, and I'm telling you, it was like you have to order it. You can't just like roll up in there and expect to get like what you want to get. Like, you have to, like, if you want, like, say you wanted to go, like, today's Wednesday. If you wanted to go like next week on Tuesday, like, you would go on your phone right now and then go to the calendar and go to like Tuesday of next week and then put in what you want. Because if you wait even like 2 or 3 days before, like, if you want like the beef short ribs and like, X amount of brisket and this type of ribs, like, you're not going to be able to get all of that. Like, it's going to be sold out. It was incredible. In Dallas, though, for you, Andrew, you got to try Hard 8. Hard 8 is very good barbecue in Dallas as well. But Pinkerton's is by far the best that I've ever had.
Ooh, there's a Hard 8 2.3 miles from here.
Yeah, very close.
Ride your bike there.
Okay. See, I'm along with Ed here. The only the first place I went to when I came down here was a place that is probably very famous called Terry Black's, which I think that's what you were talking about, Ed.
Yeah.
I had a brisket, and I'm telling you, my life changed after eating at Terry Black's. I don't look at barbecues, dude. I grew up in St. Louis. Like we have pretty good barbecue in St. Louis.
Yeah,
dude. That Texas brisket changed my life forever. Like I will never have anything that tasted as good as that moment when I had it for the very first time. Incredible. It's freaking incredible, man.
It's good. You definitely got to go try out Hard 8. It's like pit style too. So it's like you walk up, when you get there, like you're going to walk through, 2.8 miles away. So the one I'm thinking of is probably the one that's in Plano.
Okay.
And that's like right off of 121, like real close.
Yeah.
In Plano?
There's one in Roanoke, the Colony, and there's one in Capel. That's the one that's really close to me.
Okay, the Colony the one in Capel is really close to you?
Yeah, it's 2 miles.
Yeah. So yeah, that one, I haven't been to that one. I've been to the one in Roanoke, and I've been to the one that's in the Colony was like where I lived when I was playing.
Yeah, right by Frisco.
For 2 years, it was like right next to our house. So we would go there a lot, and it's good. I mean, you're walking up in there, and they got it on the smoker. Like you just pull up, it's all sitting there, and you're like, I want a pound of that. They just pull up the whole brisket and they throw it back in the thing. I mean, it's like a smooth operation. Like you go through there, It can be a little bit overwhelming the first time, but I mean, you're like looking at all of the stuff, and it's like, I just want like to try all of it, and you can if you want.
Yeah, I'm probably me and the wife are probably gonna go at some point this weekend. I got one question left for you. I know you've given us 50 minutes of your time, so this is my last one for you here. We'll wrap up. You mentioned earlier that you were a little bummed out that you missed the series in Houston and Texas down in Arlington there. Opening day is in Dallas, Texas. How are you looking forward to that series? And if you are, if you are making that trip to Texas with the Red Sox come opening day, how many family members are going to be there?
Too many is the answer to that. No, I mean, I'm very much so like looking forward to that. One, like opening day is like, to me, it was like I was blessed. Like not a lot of people get to make their like debut on opening weekend. So to me, like that was surreal. But everybody tells me that like everybody was telling me like, man, like opening day, like you'll never forget it. Like every year it's the best. And so to be able to like have that technically for me, like back home is going to be awesome. I mean, I'll have all of my family there. I'll even have, college friends that are coming in, like the same group. I had same group of friends that came a couple times last year. Like they're coming in for that one because they're going to want to come in and be able to see my family too. So, I mean, that's just right now is kind of like what would be planned. Like those guys, obviously, like they're going to wait to book flights and stuff like that for whenever we know for sure. But like they'll definitely be there, and then I mean all of my family will be there, and I got a pretty large family, so it'll be a lot of people.
Yeah, that'll be something to look forward to, man. I mean, if I don't know, I just feel like it'd be so cool for you. Obviously, opening day as well, and just being in your home state there.
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like we need to have you on in the middle of the season at this point. I mean, we could talk for another hour.
Don't distract him. Don't distract him.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. It's a good point. We will not do that. But Justin, we appreciate you coming on. Obviously, coming on 2 off seasons in a row. Very much appreciate it. And obviously, we're going to be rooting for you and looking out for you in spring training and once the season starts. But thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you guys. It's been fun.